Welcome back to the Funker 530 Combat Footage Review. My name's Ronnie. I'll be your host once again. Do me a favor, tap the like button, drop a comment in the chat to let me know where you are right now. Generally, we're back. It's Friday. I got a new cup. What's up? All right, I promise I'm getting moving here. I'm moving. Switzerland, what's going on? Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. Very much. Romania, what's up? Happy birthday. Not my birthday, but we'll get there. Appalachian, Poland, Ukraine, Ireland, Finland, SoCal, the armpit of America. It's better than being the asshole, I guess. Finland, again. Wow, there's a lot of people here from Finland. Philadelphia, what's up? Australia, Brazil, Germany, Florida. I should have probably bleeped myself. Let's get going. We got a lot to cover. Thank you very much for your patience in starting tonight. Technically, I'm early because I did put out a tweet saying I was going to be running a little bit late. Well, it was leg day. I was in the gym. I was trying to finish up my workout and, kiss the kids and get started with the rest of my work here tonight. And I appreciate your patience, as always, for being a little bit flexible with our start times. It's been that way forever. Probably going to continue to be that way while I wear many different hats for a couple different, great organizations and groups of people. Let's talk about tonight, though. Tonight is sponsored by Venture Surplus. You guys know Venture Surplus at this point. 10% off. You guys use the code FUNK10 to get 10% off of anything that you buy over there. They got MREs. That's one of the things that you're going to see in the pinned comment and in the description. But the code works no matter what you're buying. You could buy assault packs. You could buy cold weather gear. You could buy gloves. You could buy first aid kits. Just about anything that you need over there from a military surplus perspective. Venture Surplus gave us a code for you to use. We don't make any additional money. FUNK10, F-U-N-K 10. Check it out. Link in the description. Let's talk about what we're going to cover tonight, though. We're going to spend a little bit of time in Syria, give you a little bit of an update there, because I think a lot of the focus has been on HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and some of their progress that's been made, but not a whole lot of focus has been on the SDF, the American-backed, at least to a certain extent, SDF, which are the Kurds. We're going to see a lot of footage of theirs, some of their actions against the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, but then we're going to shift to another around the world segment. We're going to see some very disturbing footage coming out of Germany tonight. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there. I believe we're also going to cover a couple other areas. India, well, the Indian Ocean, I believe it was. Once again, a little bit of disturbing footage coming from there. But then we'll get into the Ukraine footage tonight, where we'll talk about some pretty heavy topics. Tonight should probably be a pretty heavy, potentially long stream, but we'll get there when we get there. Let's start with Syria. We are going to head to, technically we're using UA control map for this, but we're going to be using it to get a better understanding of where this footage is coming from in Syria. We're going to be here. I'm going to be showing you guys some video. And if you recall last week, we had a stream on Tuesday. We talked about the U.S. locations, generally speaking, in this northeastern part of Syria. There's that long, I can probably pull up that other map that we looked at, but there's that long area that's held by Turkish-backed SNA and Turkey themselves here. But I'm going to show you basically U.S. forces as they work with the SDF to take and hold ground that they haven't been in quite some time. So this footage that we're going to watch right out of the gate here starts there. Here it comes for you. Happy Friday, welcome in, and welcome back. Here's the footage. Now, one of the interesting things that we've talked about here in the past is the U.S. troop presence in Syria. I have kind of repeatedly, I should say, used the number of 900. That is the DoD's official number that even their DoD spokesperson, General Patrick Ryder, had been using. Well, he came out very recently with kind of a bomb, I wouldn't say a bombshell, but something of a notification that, hey, it's not just 900. It's probably closer to 2,000. So as it stands right now, there are approximately 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria. This next bit of footage is going to take place here. This is going to be the SDF. So again, Turkish militias striking Syrian National Army militias in their positions. I want to say this takes place from a little bit far away, and the impact is going to be out on a mountaintop. But this does show that there is quite a bit of activity between and amongst those factions. I would say overarching, there are probably three, with many, many, many different sub-factions that go underneath. You have the SNA, Turkish-backed militias, which is really a rebrand of the Free Syrian Army. But then you have the SDF, the Kurds, PKK, YPG. Then you have the rebels, the opposition forces. That's HTS and all of their merry men, or whatever you want to call them. Here's that footage. All right, let's bring it up. I think the most pertinent thing to note here is the goats. Wrong button. Let's move on to our next bit of footage that we have here. This footage is going to take place. We're going to be moving. Let's just go to the map and I'll show you. We're going to be kind of moving in a half circle down and around this forward edge of where U.S. troops, along with the SDF, hold the most ground. Right. So as we get, there's Qaim. As we get further to the south, that's going to be the areas really central to Syria. Oh, we're way too far, Ron. That's where there's going to be those small pockets of the Islamic State left. Up here in the northwest, I would say the general forward line of troops, if you will, it's not really as clear as say, like the war in Ukraine, is around about here-ish. There are those that are tracking the war and the ever-moving forward line of troops much better and much deeper than I am, so please do go and get with them. But in this northwest area, that's where you're going to have a lot of Turkish-backed SNA, Syrian National Army. And then as you move into the south and southwest, towards Damascus, those are those areas that HTS took. Interestingly, like we talked about the last time we were here, though, as we get down towards Golan Heights, that's where Israel is starting to take a little bit of ground, specifically Golan, but they have pushed beyond that, as we saw in footage last Tuesday. It was an odd day for us to stream, but myself and one of our team members went down to range day with Donut Operator and Demo and Brandon Herrera and all of our friends down there, Tacticon, all the guys were there. All the boys were there. It was a lot of fun. There's going to be a full video coming out for that soon. Here is this footage to the immediate north of Raqqa. Couldn't find the copy and paste button there. Hello, copy. Why is this off? Well, I think we borked it. So I'm going to have to use my mouse and I'm going to have to plug in my keyboard because for the first time in a long time, my keyboard finally died. Nice. Go. Click. We're doing it live. These are actually photos that I wanted to show you. Here you are. These are from whatever that means. More U.S. troops immediately north of Raqqa. While you guys are looking at this, I'm going to see if I can't plug in this keyboard for a second. I've done this before, I promise. Nailed it. And we're back. Some more of these photos here. Just showing once again that the U.S., along with the SDF, is pressing into these areas very far forward of where they previously were. And I wouldn't say very far. But there's something that I was talking about on Twitter not too long ago, and I do still think it is at least a relative concern. As HTS et al., the opposition forces, and the SNA, so the Turkish-backed forces, kind of consolidate their respective power bases. I can see this absolutely turning into a gang on the Kurds, which ultimately is going to be, at least generally, placing U.S. troops even further in to harm's way. They're already in harm's way. That's why they're in Syria. But I would expect to see very much so the situation in Syria to get worse. I would expect the situation in Syria to get worse over the next little while. The SDF has capabilities to, like this, to shoot down a Turkish Bayraktar. Bayraktar. I'm going to turn that music off. Turkey would want nothing more than to just absolutely turn everybody loose against anybody that has occurred, whether it be PKK or YPG. They consider them one and the same. The United States does not. The United States considers there to be a separation between the PKK and the YPG. Just working some cables now that I have this this thing plugged in for the first time ever. As long as we've been streaming in this room, something to think about. As long as we've been streaming in this room, this is the first time that keyboard has died. It is a Logitech something or other, something. Not sponsored by Logitech, but we could be. What you guys doing? Let's move on. Now, near the Tishreen Dam. Here's some footage of the SDF preparing for an operation that we're then going to get to see footage of in a moment. Here you are. These are Kurds.
شيء لازم؟
لا والله ما فوقاش من يرين.
أول إيش؟
سكرتني أول.
يعني شقات حاكمية خاصة دليل كودات كبتنا لأبقى حاكمية هذا تأخذ كارج من خدم بخير. بس تدار كابلة بدو ديس بجرجي
All right. And now that SDF operation against the Syrian National Army forces, Turkish-backed once again. Note the kits, note the equipment from the SDF here. FPV drones and drone-dropped munitions. All footage is propaganda. Correct. Doesn't matter who publishes it. It has a desired effect when you publish it and hope for somebody to watch it. People use the word propaganda with a negative connotation. I don't always. Colloquially, the word propaganda is a negative term. I use it very much for its foundational term, whether it comes from Russia or Ukraine or the United States or the Houthis. All combat footage recorded and released for the purposes of somebody to watch it is propaganda. Let's move on. That's what I had for you guys from the SDF. Again, the reason I wanted to kind of focus on that is there's a lot of discussion and a minimal separation, at least at the very top level. So we're talking like 30,000 foot here between HTS and the opposition forces that took over Damascus, that essentially pushed Assad out. Then you have the SNA, Syrian National Army. That's the those folks that are backed by Turkey, alongside Turkey. Then you have the SDF, which to at least a certain degree have support from the United States. Not all of the SDF does, and in not every operation are they going to be supported by the United States. The quote-unquote policy is that the United States supports the SDF in operations against the Islamic State. Any operations that the SDF is currently fielding against the SNA, for example, the United States policy is that there is no alignment. I'm just reporting the context that I know. Let's move on to Yemen really quick for a strike from Israel that I thought was pertinent. This strike took place on the Hejaz Central Power Plant in Yemen from Israel. Ronnie, how many yards are 5 miles? What is that, 1760 times 5? Whatever that math is. I do believe I have close-up footage of this. Now, before somebody says something stupid, this is not a nuclear power plant.
أول مرة سمعتها قلت عطاقي صار عاد يضرب والله طفون ولا بيحتاج طفاية واحدة
ما عادش طفايات فين طفايات.
All right, let's bring it back up. We're gonna pause for a second. I need to check in on the support and thank you guys very much for it. Very cool to see Tech Priest Ronnie at work. Thanks for the 5, bro. Thanks very much. I do want to also mention that I've got a couple new pieces of our merch on today from our friends at Savtac. I don't really know how to put this, but we actually don't make any money when you buy our merch either. We just think it's cool to have merch. We've got the war hat. We've got the Christmas shirt. So that's a PG-7 with Christmas lights on it, and on the back it's Santa holding an AT-4. Hold on, check it out. I thought it was pretty cool. Don't look at my legs. And then we have our new cup. So the new cup says it's inspired by Josh. You guys should know Josh. It says, I'm just here for the violence. Because some days it really is just about that. Let's move on to our Around the World segment. I did see some super chats come through that for some reason don't show up right now on my list. I saw, I want to say, a $20 one. And guys, if I missed that, I'm sorry. For some reason, the alerts over on the Stream Elements side aren't showing it. Thank you so much for it. You guys know that this stream is 100% free. You don't have to do that. It's not my birthday, but thank you very much. We are moving into the Around the World segment where I have some footage from India. Now, the Indian Navy appears to have been hot dogging it on this boat when it really goes awry. Quite a few people were actually killed in the incident that you're about to see here. I got more detail for you while we're watching. Now they're doing some maneuvers here. It looks like they go to turn and then they have an issue of some kind. They don't catch the water just right. And that boat collides with this passenger vessel. And if I have my sources correct, this entire incident led to 13 people being killed and 3 being injured. Now I'm almost certain that a portion of that was potentially drowning, rescue-oriented problems associated with it. The impact itself, I'm not certain. I don't know what kind of passenger vessel this is, but that's the report that we have and the best that we have. Bringing it up. This next one's going to be a little bit tough to watch. Discretion is heavily advised from here until we get to the end of the stream tonight, because there are going to be some tough things to watch for us. I'm just going to put it that way. I don't have the eloquent words that I'd like to for that. I'm just going to leave it there. A terrorist attack took place in a Christmas market in Germany using a vehicle, specifically in Magdeburg. The video that you're about to watch might be really difficult to see. Here's that attack. Now, at the last time I was recording current statistics for, we're not going to leave it on that. We're going to bring it back up to me. Current statistics. The death toll was at 11. That was probably 3 or 4 hours ago, the last I was tracking it. That is not to say that that is all of those killed in this terrorist attack. The injury toll was somewhere above 60. I have now seen 80. Regardless, that number continues to grow as they continue to find victims. Now, this asshole, I'm sorry, Funker, if you're listening, was arrested. Here is some footage of him being arrested. Look at his vehicle. Now, internalize that. Internalize the source of these dents. So a little bit more detail, if I understand correctly, and this one kind of rolled in right towards the information cutoff for tonight's stream. We've got another one coming up here in a little bit of a Russian strike that rolled in right at the end of when I was prepping tonight's stream. If I understand correctly, this guy is also a Saudi Arabian doctor. Well, I shouldn't say also. Well, technically it's an also because he's an asshole and a Saudi Arabian doctor. Saudi Arabian asshole who's a doctor, if you will. He is now apprehended. This is one of those instances where it's not necessarily combat footage, but it's something that I think is pertinent for us to talk about, for us to see. We've got a trip planned later on in the coming year that we're headed to, not necessarily a war zone, but an area that is rife with lawlessness. I wouldn't say that Germany is, but this leads to some of the challenges with the amount of open borders that we have across the world right now. And you could take what you want from me saying that. You really can. But watching that video today was rough. And it should be right? We cover some really nasty stuff here, and I'm not trying to preach to you, but we cover some really nasty war footage here. Seeing that come home to a market where your kids could be, where you could be trying to pick up a roast. He got off the easy way. Let's move on. We're moving into Ukraine, and we're going to start in Moscow. Speaking of strikes, at home, with a little bit different context. Ukraine conducted an assassination using what I would describe as an improvised explosive device. I said what I said. I meant what I said. Here's the footage. So this individual, this was Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov. Now, Igor Kirillov, I'll bring up a second angle for you guys here, is the general of the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Troops Corps. It was a reprisal attack for Russia's use of chemical weapons in Ukraine, according to Ukraine. Here is the second angle of that. I'm going to have a very unpopular take on this. I've told you guys once before that I will piss 100% of you off, and I'm not afraid to do that. I'm just not, right? If I were shaping everything that I said for a specific audience or for a specific group of people, then I wouldn't be doing my own belief system or my own principles justice, right? Opinions themselves aren't principles. They might be founded in principles. But in my opinion, an assassination, or you could call it a strike, but by definition, it would be an assassination using an improvised explosive device, unless you're trying to tell me that scooters, which was ultimately what blew up right here, are standard military munitions. But something like this, in the information space that we have now, within a war that is so heavily influenced by the information that's flowing and misinformation that's flowing. You can't argue with misinformation. It's especially not with respect to the war in Ukraine. Something like this has the potential to very much so damage Ukraine's potential for Western support. We spent the last 20 years, Ukraine included, embattling IEDs in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and it's not necessarily the technique itself. So it has nothing to do with the technique. It has nothing to do with the target. The technique is warranted. The United States has used a similar technique. Ask me how I know. The target is warranted. It is a military general in a state of war. It's the apparent disregard for the information warfare narrative. There's a new administration coming in from the United States. I would argue that this kind of strike is potentially more damaging than it is helpful. You have to account for the general itself, the potential outcome of whether or not that general's removal from the battle space is going to ultimately impact the war. Then you have to account for the morale impact, both for Ukraine, which will be generally positive, and for Russia. Then you have to account for Russia's perception of that strike. You always have to give the enemy a vote. Then you account for the Ukrainian populace's perception of that strike. Then you account for the information space's perception of that strike. And the furtherance of the narrative that could very much so end up in a net negative for Ukraine. That is not a popular take. A friend of mine was absolutely raked across the internet. His name's Preston Stewart. Personally attacked. I don't care if you guys attack me. Come on, bring it on. I'm not worried about it. But Preston is one of the best of us. From an objectivity perspective, I feel like his content goes to a much deeper level than I ever do. We're a footage team. But he was absolutely raked for a very similar take. And if you did personally attack somebody for an opinion on just a strike that, in my opinion, is not necessarily overly impactful to the end state of the war, but could be very impactful from an information warfare perspective, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. Plain and simple. Let's move on. Oh, I got photos of the scooter here. Discretion advised, because you're also going to see the deceased. Ronnie, you're wrong. Okay. That's great. Bringing it up. We are going to move into Kursk, where we have a series of strikes from HIMARS, relatively center to the city of Rilsk. The first of these strikes is going to take place here against this building. Ukraine has claimed that these buildings were barracks and staging areas for Russia's troops. Russia, of course, is claiming the opposite. There have reported to be civilian casualties killed in these strikes. And there are a series of locations, 3 specifically, that I'm going to show you footage from. The first is that building itself. The footage is coming up for you now.
Просто трэш. Просто трэш.
I've got one more from that exact building. And that's coming up for you guys now. I'd like you to make note of the attire of the personnel that are walking around here.
Вот, посмотрите. Вот, что произошло. Вот там человек лежит. Там лежит человек 200-й. Вот суки, что сделали. Вот, посмотрите. Вот,
This one ended early.
что произошло. Вот там человек лежит.
So there are multiple versions of this video moving around, and you can nearly see it here. I'd have to go back and find the others. But as this individual continues forward, and you can more or less make this out, I don't know, it's up to you guys what you want to take away from it, but all of these personnel are in military uniform. Whether that's pertinent or not to you is entirely up to you. Let's move to our second location here. Another strike took place here. Now, the original reports were that this was ATACMS. It is no longer believed that it was ATACMS, but GIMLRS, GMLRS. That footage is coming up for you now. Can anyone see my comments? Yes, Bald Eagle, I can see your comments. So, if I'm not mistaken, that is one of the indicators of it being GIMLRS. Let's bring it up. And then we have our third location, which takes place here. Relative to the forward line of troops, I'll just bring that all the way out here. All 3 of those strikes within, I don't know, a Uncle Rico baseball throw from each other. This being the operational area of Kursk. And here is that footage. Well, give me 1 second, guys. I copied and pasted the same thing twice. So I'm going to pull up that second strike for you here in a moment. I believe this one actually takes us through the inside of one of these buildings that was hit. That's why I want to show it to you. But we also have, I think, if I recall, we also have some blast craters. Coming up for you now. Here is the internal.
Да, Ирка, педа. Все нахуй, хлам. Ой, пизда. Нет, пока все проверили, никого нету.
Now, I want to talk about the reason I wanted to show you this one with the blast crater is the initial report of this, and I'm not saying this wasn't used, was that it was cluster. That doesn't look a whole lot like a cluster blast crater. So, not necessarily saying that it wasn't, at least in part, cluster munitions used. That's not. That looks like unitary warhead, meaning a single warhead impacted, created a blast crater. That's what you have.
Нет, пока все проверили, никого нету. Пизда. Вот, пизда нахуй. Аминь нахуй.
And another crater.
Нахуй. Не, пока нет, там никого нету, в здании никого
Military
нет.
uniform.
Только проверили, да, ребята еще там все вышли. В здании никого нету. Увезли, один был увезли. Один был увезли. Один в машине стоит бронированный.
That could very well be a blast crater that has now filled with water, especially if there is plumbing going through there.
В машине стоит бронированный. Все, что там есть, мы, блядь, оттуда вытащим.
Another military uniform there. Not that. Those are like Adidas sweatpants or something.
Пацаны, говорите,
Right
что
there.
помочь надо. Да мы сами вот
In
сейчас.
there.
Да я понимаю. Уебали, блядь.
In there.
Вот сюда.
And the guy filming. Whether or not that matters to you, it's entirely up to you.
Вот сюда здесь, он старше, блядь. Никто сюда не проходит. Все, блядь.
Все, понял.
Yeah, those actually are. That is Adidas. Wow, look at that. I just work here. Let's bring it up. Russia strikes back. Russia, right before we went live. Well, I shouldn't say right before we went live. Right before I set the information cutoff for tonight's stream, struck Kyiv with an Iskander. I actually didn't even have time to find out exactly where this was or what it was. But they nailed it. Where the North Koreans at? We're moving there next. Where it's going to get spicy. All right, let's pause here for a second before we get into the next section of Kursk, where we're going to be talking about North Koreans. I want to check in on the support and thank you guys for it. I'm gonna get this name right this time. Bebop. Cowboy Bebop. I don't know. It's because it's in like caps and lowercase just over and over again there. I just can't figure it out. I'm too stupid. Nobody said I was smart. I just show you footage. Cowboy Bebop, thank you very much for the 20. Ronnie, you're right. Not necessarily. I typically will provide you opinions based on footage, right? So not necessarily right, not necessarily wrong, but thank you very much for the $20. That's so many dollars. Happy birthday, big boy. Thanks, Pop. Thank you very much for that 20. Chris from the internet, thanks very much for the $5. Any companies you work with that make reasonably priced Kevlar/ballistic blankets? No. I don't know anybody that actually haven't even looked into that before. It'd be like weighted blankets. It sounds kind of cool. I'm a fan of weighted blankets, personally. But I don't know if anybody makes ballistic or Kevlar blankets. That's interesting. I would like to protect my legs at work. I've grown attached to them. Oh, where do you work, bro? Anyway, thank you for the $5. Yeah, appreciate it. Gavin, thank you very much for the $5. Damn it, Ronnie, can you please get sponsored by a company that sells pants? Why would I want to do that? What are pants but a prison? That war hat is badass, though. Yeah, it is. Yeah, they nailed it. We wanted a dad hat, and they made it. They made it for us. And Demo, thank you very much for the 16 months. Daniel, thank you for the 33 months. Thank you guys both. I actually agree with you way more often than not. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Let's move on. Let's talk about North Koreans. The first series of videos that I'm going to show you are filmed using a potato. That it is impossible to tell which pixel is a North Korean versus a Russian. It's impossible to tell whether or not it's ants moving across an ant farm. I can give you a location for it, okay? That's the best that I can do. Then I'm going to show you some additional footage that I can't necessarily give you a location for, but does show North Koreans. Like, they're speaking Korean in the video with Russians about drones that they almost got killed by. I'm going to try and work you through some logic here. The first video is going to take place here. And then I got to circle back. The reason there was a pause there is my video list is a little bit out of order. The first video is going to take place here. Note the location on the forward line of troops. These are claimed to be North Koreans. Can I validate that? No. Can I validate that they are not Eastern Russians? No, I can't. Stand by, though. Discretion advised. I gave you one earlier, and I said that it was going to apply for the remainder of the stream. If you're just now joining us and you got your kid sitting on your lap, put that kid to bed and come back or turn it off. Yes, the footage is choppy, not the stream. In that same exact location, this is under FLIR, or thermal, cluster munitions rained absolutely hail down on that spot, which this might have been resultant in what you just saw. Video here. This reads to me like ATACMS cluster. That is a lot of cluster. It's most certainly not DPICM. But that is geographically, from a geolocated perspective, the same exact location we were just looking at. Now, just west of there, once again, this footage is taken from really far away, filmed using a potato. I have no idea who it is. All I can tell you who it's reported to be. This is reported to be North Koreans, just to the northwest of that location we just were. So this is the location we're going to, and this is the location we just were, okay? From a timeline perspective, there's at least some likelihood that the dudes we're about to watch here are the same guys that made their way through this tree line, down to these positions, and met cluster. Here comes the footage from that. Very long column of troops here. The footage itself is choppy, not the stream, don't worry. That is what you call perfect enfilade. Single file line. An easy way to understand enfilade is ducks in a row. There's a reason that we walk not like that over open fields in Western militaries. All right, let's move on. That's not the only location in that northwestern quadrant or segment of Ukraine. Here, that's not the only location where there are claimed to be North Koreans. We're also going to move down here. Specifically, this location, where once again, a long column of troops reported to be North Koreans were identified. Well, at least their spacing is a little bit better here. I shouldn't have said column. These guys are kind of they're spaced out. This looks very much to me like a quote-unquote wave. Now, that term is very interesting to people. When people hear, under most circumstances, the word wave in the context of war, they think enemy at the gates wave. They think waves, just a line of massive troops. Waves in the context of the war in Ukraine, according to people in Ukraine, are much smaller but much more numerous. Something like this, where they would send this wave, and then they would send another, a little bit smaller than what Hollywood might have told you. But this is the wave tactics that people are talking about right now. Look at that. You got to look close. Again, could be ants, for all I know. So all those Koreans made it through, or what? I don't know the outcome of this, of that specifically. But the argument that they're not Korean is starting to become ridiculous. I'm going to show you some footage here. This footage is, with those last two, I could geolocate that footage. I can't geolocate this one, but I can tell you that they're speaking Russian and Korean, and they're talking about a drone, and the Korean guy's attempts to shoot down that drone. In fact, when they open up this video, the Russian says, maybe we should shoot him and take his gun. For those that speak Russian in the chat, feel free to correct me on that. Here's the footage.
Four drone.
땅땅땅땅땅땅 해가지고 three.
Good guy. Good guy.
Это boost.
I'm going to play it one more time so you can listen through it. That's not Russian.
Four drone.
땅땅땅땅땅땅 해가지고 three.
Good guy. Good guy.
Now, let's talk about this a little bit deeper. I'm going to give you some opinion here because now the question isn't whether or not they're there or not, even though that's effectively a shift of a goalpost, right? So the goalpost for the longest time has been, how could you be so stupid? There are also Asian-looking people in Russia. Yeah, we know. Like the majority of us that have been at least inferring that the likelihood of North Korean troops in Ukraine was high, we know that. I get it. But I've been saying that that there was a high likelihood they were there for quite some time. We've reviewed footage of them training and equipping inside of Russia. Them being in Russia is somewhat expected. What's different about North Korean troops, even being in Russia, is that is another sovereign state's military that is being employed to fight against a third-party sovereign state. It's quite a bit different than volunteers of the United States, of France, of wherever, volunteering to fight. Now, what people will typically bring up is reports of American troops being inside of Ukraine. There is at least some likelihood, and some would point to information that is out there that shows some level of presence of American troops being in Ukraine. From primarily, and a part of that information that was shown, logistics tracking purposes. So people were asking, we're going to dive way into opinion here. People were asking for us to do more tracking for the arms and supplies that were being provided. And when we went to do that, people then got mad that we were doing that. They are not employed in the fight against Russia. Russia is employing North Korean troops, so foot soldiers from a third-party sovereign state. Whether that matters to you is entirely up to you. I'm just trying to impress upon you the difference between that and volunteers, civilian volunteers choosing to go there on their own volition from Western states. Quite a bit different. Whether or not, once again, that matters to you and its potential impact larger than just what happens in Russia, entirely your prerogative. It is different, though. Let's move on. Reports from Ukraine don't really favor the performance of the North Koreans. Here's some footage. You tell me what you see. This is coming straight from the website. The drone didn't shoot that guy. And that guy dropped his gun and isn't moving. But I will say that this guy shot at the drone in the direction of the drone, which flew right over top of that other guy. These are reported to be North Koreans. Do I know that for certain? No. No, I do not. It's also reported to be Kursk. Did I find a geolocation for that? No. No, I did not. Just giving you the report on that. Gonna pause here. And thank you very much. Holy goodness. R. Cheesy, thank you for $100, sir. Sir, this stream is free. Thank you so much for that. That is well above and beyond the $0 necessary for being here. Merry Christmas, brother. Thanks for all the hard work you do to make these streams possible. Thank you for being here. You make it worth it. Thank you for that. And Merry Christmas to you. Bebop Cowboy, thanks for the $20. Hey, brother, so leave is starting. Can we still expect your birthday and stream every Friday or what? Got it if you're busy. Nope, we'll be back here next Friday for the next Funker 530 show. I don't anticipate having to take another step away from the stream until probably SHOT Show, which is late January. We're here. Let's get after it. Got a lot of footage to review. Zag, thank you for the $10. Mr. Naughty, thank you for the $10. You and the Funker team are the best. Thank you for that. Thank you for the information and invite to different tactics. Well, thanks very much for the $10. Chris, thanks once again for, another $5. I tune cars. When people forget the basic things like transmission fluid, they tend to explode. I had one go big bang 130 miles per hour this week. Wow. I had one let go in a big bang at 130 miles. Yeah, that's fast, man. I hope you're okay. Thank you very much for the $5, sir. John, thank you for the $5. How likely do you think that it is that the respected comrade, I'm assuming you're talking about Kim, has seen these vids of his troops? Slim to none. Yeah, I doubt that's possible. I mean, he's probably one of few in the trusted elite circle that have access to the World Wide Web, but I doubt that he's following the combat footage on Twitter. Still somewhat likely. I don't know. Maybe he is, isn't he like a huge basketball fan? I remember that being a thing at one time. Thank you very much for the $5. Lasher, thank you for the $20. Love you, man. Good analyses as always. Thank you for $20, man. That's a lot of money. Consecrator, thank you for the $1.40. Happy birthday, Ryan. Not my birthday. My birthday isn't until next September, specifically September 1st, just so we're all aware. Okay, more North Koreans that there's no chance I could validate that these are North Koreans. I'm just giving you the report of what it was said. But they're targeted by a Mark 19. Here you are. Dennis Rodman, that's what it is. Yeah, he's good friends with Dennis Rodman. Hell yeah, Verena. Virgos unite. Discretion advised. I think these are drone-dropped munitions towards the end here. All right, bringing it up. Yeah, discretion advised once again for this one. Somewhere along the, quote, northern front. I don't know what that means. I assumed it meant Kursk. You have two Ukrainians. It was reported that they were conducting some form of sabotage operation. They could be there doing, a scouting mission, long-range surveillance. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing. But as they round the back corner of this building, they are ambushed by a lone Russian. Discretion once again advised. Here's the footage. These are Ukrainians, these two individuals. They round the back corner of that building. And from this rubble, they're engaged by a single Russian. Ending things with frags. Coming up. I'm going to go back to the top of my list here because there is footage that was not related to North Koreans that I wanted to cover. And this shows areas of Ukraine that Russia has recently taken back, areas of Kursk that Russia has recently taken back near those positions we were discussing, Koreans, quote unquote, which were here and there, but we're going to here. This is an area that at least at one point was held by Ukraine, and it is now held once again by Russia. Discretion advised for this, though. There will be deceased in this video. Not a whole lot of combat. So Russian mod release up here in the top right. So my take from this footage was effectively the withdrawal from those positions of these Ukrainian troops. And these being Russian troops that are now entering into those positions. All right, let's bring it up. Now, near there, if I'm not mistaken, this is an interesting one that I tweeted out, I want to say like Saturday, right after our show. Or excuse me, not right after our show, because our show was on Tuesday. But here, we're going to have footage of an Abrams, an M1A1SA, stands for Situational Awareness, being hit by multiple FPV drones. Now, for those of you that follow me personally on Twitter, first of all, thank you. You will note that there was an interview conducted with this tank crew, specifically, I think, the tank commander. They do survive, though it was a bit of a perilous journey to get out of there. One of the things that they said very specifically in their report or in their interview was God bless America, because based on some of the changes that they made to this Abrams, normally Abrams isn't really outfitted to defend from PG-7s that hit the top of it. But based on some of the changes, like he called it a cope cage, along with contact reactive armor, effectively allowed them to withstand not just 2 that you'll see in this video, but I want to say it was either 4 or 6 FPV drones. So that strike gives it a bit of a mobility kill there. So it's no longer moving. This strike is going to wedge its way up right between the hull and the turret. Very weak spot there. Does not pop the turret. That's not really how Abrams operates. The turret can pop on an Abrams, just like any tank, but it doesn't send it into low Earth orbit like the T-Series tanks do. So if you guys would like to read that interview that was conducted, there were a bunch of takeaways that I thought were super pertinent. I am always interested in the lessons learned, especially of U.S. equipment, whether they be the best tank that we have, the Bradley, the Abrams, just the Stryker, anything that we have sent. Lessons learned, whether you like to hear this or not, is probably one of the priority reasons that we're sending a lot of stuff there. Now, I want to say Biden has also just announced another $1.2 billion of, more than likely at least partially equipment, partially contracts, depends on the breakout. I haven't seen the breakout of that. But that should round out the total of the allocated monies, if I understand correctly, prior to the Trump administration taking over. And now let's move to this next video. I have in big bold letters the words warning, warning, warning set aside for this one. The following video might be one of the most brutal that we've watched on this show. There's a reason that I wanted to show this one to you, though, because this is something that's been studied by a couple people out there, and that is ultimately the effects that this war is having on the psyche of the soldier on the ground. It is unlike just about any war if you study it from a modern lens. We're in an age of precision munitions alongside traditional tactics, even antiquated tactics like trench warfare. There is literally nowhere that's safe. You're going to see in this next video, I want to say it's a BTR, laden with Russian troops on the top of it. They're kind of barreling towards their objective and they start getting hit by FPV drones. Troops start falling off, troops dismount. Towards the end of this video, one of those Russian troops is going to decide to take his own life. I have not covered a lot of this before on the show, but this is something that has been very, very prevalent in the information space I shouldn't say in the information space, very, very prevalent in footage over the last, especially 6, 7, 8 months, to the point where there are people that are tracking these video elements or pieces of evidence of this being a common occurrence. Discretion heavily advised for what you're about to watch. So the BTR is engaging, attempting to provide some form of suppression and cover fire for some form of support for its dismounts. This has happened a lot on video, and this is the first time I'm showing this to you guys, kind of for a reason. Under most circumstances, all we get is just this. But because we have the additional context that led up to this, if you're wondering why I'm showing this to you, this is not something that I really want to. Because we have the additional context of exactly what led this individual to make this decision, that's why I think it's pertinent. Let's move on. We're moving into our general section here. This is going to be BM-21 grad fire, filmed from the perspective of being on the ground, at least in a hard stand building, while it's happening around you. Kind of horrifying itself. The Grad is one of those systems that I wouldn't really label a precision system. Unless, what is it, the Tornado? No, there's one of them that's a little bit more precise. I would call it more of an area denial because it is about minute of grid square. And if you're in that grid square, when it decides to send a salvo, which I want to say is up to something like 40 rockets, that's what you should be. That's what you can expect on the other side of it. Jesus. All right. Let's move on to our next one. Okay. Discretion advised for this next one. Somewhere, I don't know where, somewhere with snow on the ground, so it is relatively recent, a Russian assault is taking place, and a BTR decides to dismount its troops, and then it decides to run over its troops. Here you are. Such an American thing, discretion advised. It is war footage. YouTube requires us to do things like that. Otherwise, based on the type of footage that I cover, and you're not going to find many places that do this on a live show, I'll tell you that much. Based on the type of footage that I cover, it keeps us from receiving, strikes. I also, when it's really nasty footage, I try and talk through it. Context is the important element for YouTube. So we've met with them personally, and that was one of the things, is warning people, saying, hey, don't watch this if you think it's not okay, or if you think you're not going to be okay by watching it. Let's move on. Got a Ukrainian Mi-8 here. Interesting perspective from exterior, shooting down with its onboard machine guns, probably a door gunner, a Iranian Shahed being flown by Russia, or it could be a Russian copy or recreation of the Shahed. I don't know. Here's the footage. The irony of YouTube saying the context matters. Yeah. We are working through ways to expand where we are live. I'm finalizing that. I've been testing it on my personal platforms for quite some time, which you're welcome to come and watch after we get out of here. Here very soon, we will be putting in redundancies. Not too long ago, we covered some interesting footage of Russians standing still when FPV drones were flying around. I have a second piece of that to show you. And I'm starting to wonder if it is a tactic wherein somebody is teaching them, if you don't move, it can't hit you, or if this is somewhere along the lines of almost a suicide by drone thing. I don't know. I don't know why you would stop and stand in the middle of a road when there are exploding robot birds flying around you. I don't know why that's something that people are doing, but it's one of those two things. Here's the footage. Come to your own conclusion on it. All right. So we've talked a lot about advancement of technology, especially when it comes to drones. Well, fiber optic drones that have a hardwired connection back to the operator, allow them to continue to operate when electronic warfare means are in place, jamming, things along those lines, to defend against drones. Under most circumstances, we're talking about that in the context to Russian-produced and released footage. This is Ukrainian-released footage showing their use of fiber optic drones with a very close-up photo, or well, start to the video here, of the fiber optic cable coming out of the front of it. Interesting. Here you go. So you just saw this tank engage here. Just fired around from its main gun. Here. And then in comes the drone. Oh, this is Magyar.
Звичайного дрону шансу нема. Працює реп. 3-2 раз. Джага! Гарне влучання. Потрібна дорозвідка. Мавік підійти ближче не може. Дусять, суки. Але дрону на оптоволокні то фіолетово. Тому дорозвідка боєм. У правому верхньому куті компетентні побачать нерухомість пакетів. А ви побачите їбнутий танк, захищений ребом. Побачите без втрати якості зображення, навіть дрібні написи на стволі. Прочитаєте. Долбіт, заєбісь, писав Хробак. Тепер долбимо ми. Спостерігайте глибоке занурення. Йобудощ!
Горить, палає техніка ворожа, рідна Україна переможе. Гей! Гей! Так! Сосать, підари!
Красунчики, ми самі промислове виробництво не вивеземо. Нам би єбашить. Передали командування наші напрацювання. Нас чують. Вироби вже проходять кодифікацію. Чекаємо з нетерпінням у промислових масштабах. Нічого складного, Ілон Маск. Очі
Somebody tell me what he just said.
та жало, робачий жах.
All right. I know what part of that was, but what was the rest of it? Let's move on while you guys let me know. Wall-E is a movie, but is also volunteering in Ukraine by laying mines. So what's interesting is these are UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles. They're using them in kind of multi-role, so they can either be, essentially a remote-controlled VBID, RCID, if you will, or they're being used to lay Soviet-era anti-tank mines. Loading it up there. All right. Next bit of footage that we have here. The only word that I have for this next video is immolate. We've got dragons. Ukrainian thermite drone hitting a Russian position here. I don't know if the position is occupied or not. I'm not certain. All right. Another quick one coming up for you. Got a Russian. Don't know where this takes place. I'm sure this could very, very easily, two Russians actually. I'm sure this could be geolocated. I didn't see one out there. But two Russians run into a building, plant some satchel charges, run back out. Boom.
со всех сторон. Быстрее, быстрее, тяжелая хуета. Блять, это уже привел в действие. Быстрее, быстрее,
Блядь,
быстрее,
Дим, убегай
быстрее,
нахуй оттуда!
Быстрее, быстрее, ебать его, все, бегом! Бегом, 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 бегом!
Стреляем!
Без остановки, блядь! А, это пацаны шмелями там с той стороны работают. Четко, четко, четко. Вот сюда забежало 3 петуха, блядь, выживших, блядь. На! Спокойной ночи.
All right, let's bring it back up. Saw a comment I thought was interesting. People argue on X if what is legal. Using thermite? I don't know who needs to hear this, but using incendiary-based weapon systems on enemy positions and military equipment is never and has never been a war crime. You can flamethrower the shit out of somebody if you want to, as long as they are an enemy combatant. Moving on. The last video before the last video that I have for you, I'll tell you what the note I wrote for this one is. It says drag balls. And I think that's because I'm having a hard time understanding how this chopper is able to fly with the pilot's balls dragging underneath of it because they're so large. Check this out. Very, very low. Allows them to stay underneath, at least to a certain extent, of most radar systems from an anti-air perspective, protecting the platform. All right. Let's bring it back up and let's go through some of this support, and thank you guys so much for it. I always have one more video for you. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to show you how much I support your Second Amendment right here in a moment with what I believe you should pick up for home defense. But first, Doug, thank you very much for the 351. Don't matter which side, brother. That is on war, touches you in all different ways. Ooh, that sound is terrifying to anyone with a soul. God bless all. Thank you very much for the 351, Doug. Appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas to you. Bald Eagle, thank you very much for the 252. There will be footage of us versus Turkey AF soon. I think Turkey's smarter than that. Turkish armed forces, I think is what you were saying. I think they're smarter than that. That would be very stupid. A single Air Force combat controller absolutely shithoused something like 200 people, like at once in Syria, and it wasn't that long ago. Don't do that. That'd be dumb. That'd be real dumb. Mr. Salty, thanks very much for the $20. Merry Christmas, brother, and Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you for that. Vlox, thank you for the 11 months. Chevy, thank you very much for the $5. Murat, thank you for the 1405. We need more frequent footage reviews, please. I have thought about expanding it back to two times a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, if I can work through a few logistical hurdles. I have like 3 jobs, guys. You know, I'm the industry relations director at the National Association for Gun Rights. Please do consider becoming a member over there. There's a lot of really great things that come out of that. But I'm also, you know, here at Funker 530, my passion work, the thing that I, you know, hope to continue doing for the rest of my life. Then you got my Army work that I still do, and, you know, my own streams that I'm working on myself. So expanding the combat footage reviews is something that I really want to do. I really want to get back to 2 and even potentially 3 times a week. But then you got to throw on top being a dad. We've got a 1-year-old. She just turned 1 not too long ago. I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old and, you know, a wife and 2 dogs and 3 cats and a home to manage. I really would like to do that. I really would. Nothing would make me happier, just to be honest with you. As it stands right now, though, from a scale perspective, we're not there yet. Thank you guys so much for being here. I got one more video for you. I do want to say Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for continuing to show up, for continuing to listen to me run my stupid mouth, for continuing to understand that I'm not here to sell you my opinion. I'm here to give you my opinion at times when I have one. Under most circumstances, we're here to review the footage, and that's it. I'll be following this stream up with a little bit of gray zone warfare. We might even have a guest tonight playing with me. Depends. I haven't had a chance to speak with him about it today, but we did plan it. Just planned it poorly, I would say. Feel free to join us. But first, before we head over there, if you are wondering how much I support the Second Amendment. I believe this should be your next home defense gun. Good night, stay informed, and go be great.
On that front leg, that's it. You're ready to go.
Reduces that high spike into a nice flat curve, which allows you to absorb into your shoulder impulse levels which would normally be associated with something like an 80mm mortar.
That's a 76mm mortar.
That's freaking awesome.
That's awesome.
3, 2.
80% up front, man.
You got that real big iron, dude.
Front leg, that's it. You're ready to go.
I'd like to get a small of the back holster for it. An appendix rig for this, I don't think it would fit small of the back. You know, maybe even three o'clock. I do prefer appendix, but you know, you gotta fit your carry to the size of the tube.
Curve, which allows you to absorb into your shoulder impulse levels which would normally be associated with something like an 80mm mortar.
I do want to talk about this just for a second, though. Note the recoil mitigation system that it has on it. You'll see the tube kind of there's a spring in there, not unlike the Barrett, at least one of the models of the Barrett. See that? You can just barely make it out there. That's what keeps it from, under some circumstances, sending you into another zip code. Good night. I love you all. Thanks for being here. Merry Christmas to you once again. And we'll see you on the follow-up stream. Stick around in the chat. It's going to prompt you to come over there. Oh, thanks very much once again to our sponsor, Venture Surplus. I appreciate them so much. Funk10, just use the code, especially if you're looking for first aid, for any milsurp gear, any assault packs, I don't know, MREs, freeze-dried goods, ton of stuff. Rotational inventory, though, just because it's in stock today doesn't mean it's going to be there tomorrow. They don't make stuff. They sell stuff that they get in stock from elsewhere. Go check them out. Thanks very much to Venture Surplus. We'll see you over on the other stream. Good night.